Now it's working. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and to remain standing and to remember all those serving across the world, and also to keep in mind one of our own who have passed away recently, who is a great person within Woodbury. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Robert will not be here tonight. He's not feeling well. To my left, we have Sandra Caviglione, Chris Gerver, Rich Gattaggio, Secretary Gail Noggle. All the way to my left, I have our telecommunications person, Mike Musso, traffic, John Collins, Dennis Lindsay, our engineer, and Rick Golden, our attorney. And I'm Maria Hunter, your chairperson. I want to thank everyone for attending the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting of April 3rd, 2019. Board members, have you had a chance to review the minutes from March 20th? If so, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. There we go. There's one added item on here. We're just going to briefly discuss cell tower application from Homeland. Robert, if you can please just...
Let me just introduce it so that the board members can understand why it's being put on. As required under the code, this application for a cell tower, Homeland Tower, filed a pre-application. Typically, that just means it meets with the board ahead of time, as with other pre-applications, in which some general ideas are fleshed out to help the applicant better frame their application. But here, circumstances have changed as a result of two things. I have suggested that this is not at the request of the applicant, but I think it's best for the board for them to appear before you tonight to ask you to set a date for a balloon test. Now, the reason that you might think that this is a little premature because you haven't seen any application yet is that a combination of one, that we're getting close to the end of a season where there's leaf off, so that if there's a balloon test, you want to have as much as possible leaf off so that you can see it more clearly. The other thing is that you can't really say, well, we'll just wait until the next leaf off condition, is because of federal law. Federal law requires that if you don't act within a certain time, they're entitled to their approval, essentially. So they've put very short, what they call a shot clock on towers, as well as co-locations, different clocks. But in order to sort of get the balloon test done in a leaf-off condition, it made sense for them to come before you tonight. They weren't planning on doing that. We asked them to do it. Tonight would just be for setting a date. The code says that it has to be done on a Saturday or on a weekend. And also there is timing notices with it. It can't be more than 14 days notice nor less than 7 days. So there are all these restrictions. So if possible, we'd like to pick a date for that balloon test with the board. It's not absolutely required that the board pick the balloon test, but historically the board has picked the date to try to make it as convenient as possible for board members in case they were planning on vacations or something like that. The second thing that will happen, not tonight, but the second thing that will happen is that as a component of the balloon test is that the applicant needs to take pictures from a variety of viewpoints so that you can get an indication as to what it's going to look like at all these points. They've predetermined about 25 spots based upon what they believe will be the most impactful viewing points and pick those. But the applicant wants not just to go forward and do those, and then later on you say, no, there should have been a different one. So what we're going to do is, by this Friday, the applicant is going to submit a map showing the locations of their proposed viewpoints. And then it will be on your meeting, your regular meeting for the 17th of this month, for you to add any that you believe would be appropriate. And then they'll get added, and pictures will be taken from that location, whatever locations the board decides to add to the current ones that were chosen by the applicant. All right, so you'll have time to do that, so it won't be rushed. So you should get that. It should be in the filed in the building department on Friday, so you can pick it up either late Friday or Monday, and you'll have until the 17th to try to figure out if you think that there should be more viewpoints than what's noted or different ones. But tonight is just to pick a date so that we can move this process along because of the federal requirements for a shot clock and the leaf-off condition. So that's why it's in the pre-application process right now, but they have filed their pre-application application fee actually in full, and also their escrow fee in full. So, go ahead.
Just give us a,
Just give us essentially where it is, and also who you are, and the name of the application, et cetera.
Good evening, Robert Cordioso, the law firm of Snyder and Snyder, on behalf of the applicant, Homeland Towers LLC. Your attorney, Mr. Golden, just basically did my job, so I appreciate that. Thank you. This is an application for a wireless telecommunications facility at 11 Abrams Road. It's in the back of the property. The facility includes a 110-foot communications tower, which meets the height limit of the village code. It also meets all of the required setback requirements. Once we perform the balloon test, as Mr. Golden indicated, we'll take photographs. We'll also prepare visual renderings. We'll do a complete visual resource evaluation. We'll do a full environmental assessment form. We'll have complete site plans and all the other supporting documentation that's required by the village code. And at that point, we'll submit the complete application. What we were simply trying to do this evening was to try and schedule the balloon test for April 27th. By your code, it has to be an all-day event. The first particular day has to be on the weekend. And what we would do is we would work with the village to have that noticed in the newspaper 14 days and 7 days in advance as required by your code. And we would have a backup date of each consecutive date thereafter in case there's inclement weather. If it's really windy or really rainy or knock on wood, snowy on April 27th, then we would roll it over to the following day to make sure we had ideal conditions. So with that, we would just respectfully request this evening to set the balloon test on April 27th if at all possible. Thank you.
board members, just also the viewpoint that will be getting the paperwork, it goes out a mile around, and if there's anything outside the mile radius, you can also make a note on it, and we can let Mike Musso know about that, so he can let the applicant know if there's anything that you deem historical or should be included in the viewpoint.
And what we'll do on that map, that's exactly right. We'll show the location. We'll show two maps, one with topography and one with an aerial. We'll show what, in different shades of blue, where the tower could possibly be visible from based on topography and also based on topography and foliage. So we'll show two different colors to give an indication on where the likelihood of visibility is. But when we do go out in the field, we also do take additional photographs if we find a location that stands out.
Okay, so with all that being said, I would offer a motion that we have the balloon test scheduled for April 27th, which is a Saturday, and then once the applicant gets the information to the building department, the proper notices will be sent out. Do I have a second?
I'll make the second.
Any discussion or question? Or Rich, you're good back there?
I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the other thing that I neglected to mention is the applicant, as I said, is going to submit some documentation this Friday as to the viewpoints. Mike Musso, your consultant, is going to look at those viewpoints as well. He is going to submit a comment letter to you on those viewpoints, not generally with respect to the project, but on those viewpoints on the Friday before your meeting, and on or before the Friday before your meeting. and then you can have the benefit of his comments on whether or not these viewpoints are appropriate, and then taking that into consideration, you may want to add even more. And the applicant is very willing to add whatever points you believe are necessary to have an accurate depiction and view of that balloon test.
Okay.
And with that, I think that's it for this
That's
application.
it for tonight. So we'll see you.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Weiss/Apple Hill. Make determination for ARB of proposed single-family home or continued discussion of application if time for determination is extended by applicant for property located at 26 Apple Hill Drive in Highland Mills. This property is subject to the village regulations for ridge preservation, 310-13. Said property is known on the village over tax maps as section 204, block 2, lot 2. We're here to, just so some background why this is on the on the agenda, is that the applicant wanted to meet, and after speaking with our attorney, it was appropriate that he come back before the board, present with all board members, so that we could hear and discuss. And also, Rick, we have to ask for extension.
Well, what it is that the code required you to make your determination at the end of the public hearing or at a specified date thereafter. You obviously were not ready to make a decision at the end of the public hearing. One of the main reasons being that you still wanted to have a calculation of what was the cubicle contents of the structure. And so you set April 3rd tonight as your decision, with the understanding that the applicant was going to submit that information for your consideration and review prior to tonight's meeting so that you could potentially issue your decision. The applicant has not submitted that information, and therefore you will either make your decision without the proper information, which means I would imagine that you deny it because you don't have the complete information to make a rational and reasonable decision. Or the applicant could extend that time for you to make a decision and have further discussion on the particular application, but at least you would not be bound by the code deadline of what has now been set as April 3rd.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joel Mann from Braham and Associates. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Weiss. First, I want to apologize for not submitting the information what was requested by the board. It was because we're trying, like Marie said, we're trying to get a meeting and come up to something what I will explain now, basically. To go back a little bit in the history of this application, we said at the beginning, the owner of this property, Mr. Weiss, purchased that property. He lives in Brooklyn, and his plan was to come out here, basically use this as summer home, holidays, weekends, and that's the way he designed that house. The first submission, going back like at the beginning, I think it was Barry Taddick who was here for the first submission. It was the house, the footprint of the house was, I believe, over 10,000 square feet, and we were looking at that, and the board wasn't happy with that. And besides that, the dissimilarity with all the neighborhood houses. Then we met together and tried to find a way how to decrease the square footage of the house and just to have the minimum needs, what he needs for the use of the house. Going there, that on the main floor had a couple bedrooms. They don't need it because usually when a lot of times they're there by themselves, so they can have these bedrooms in the basement when they have some of the kids coming from some weekends. So we redesigned the house. At the first, this was then 2 submissions ago, was about approximate, the total square footage of the house was 8798 was the first and the second floor. And then we submitted back at the last submission, but the last meeting, we also changed the square footage of the house going down for the first floor to only 6585. Now, the board raised, it was something new to us that we didn't find that in the beginning, but I believe that basically the board is right, and I think Dennis and Rick raised that issue, that the cubicle content, this is something what the board need to look on in order to measure if this is qualifying something to mention in this area. It took us a while to find a way how to measure the cubicle content. It's a little bit complicated because it's not only that you're going with the footprint of the house, you need to measure all the floors, the height of the floors, and then if you have a sloped roof, you need to find a way how to measure this. So finally we figured out that basically we rendered the house in 3D, and we had the 3D company making a mass element from the house, and that basically made the determination how much the cubicle content is of the house, and actually have this calculation tonight. I will hand to the board a calculation letter, and I will explain what I have here and what I'm offering, why I'm here tonight.
We can look at what you're handing us, but we can't decide on it, okay? And just make sure Gail has a copy so the building department can have it. Thank you. You have enough for over there? Thank you.
Thank you.
So basically, as discussed at the last meeting, we're comparing a little bit to the house across the street, where it's 13 Apple Hill. And on my first column, I put a lot of details on the 13 Apple Hill house, like, for example, the cubicle content, what we find, the footprint of the building from the basement, the first floor, then the width of the building, the depth, and the total building footprint. Wherever if it's different, if for example, this house it's the first floor, and then we have a garage what is between the levels, so it's a little bit different, the footprint, the total overall footprint of the house. Now, when you look on the first submission, it's not like the original, the first submission at the beginning when it was 10,000, it was already the second time. You can see and compare the percentage increase from the other house, and basically, I understand the board's concern. You can see the numbers right away. It's the 99%, and it's all these percentages. You can see that in the column from the 26 Apple original submission. The last submission, actually, you can see that there was one thing we're not showing here is the cubicle content. We didn't did it on that model. We actually did it on the last one. I don't know exactly how much it was, but I don't think it's matter because we already submitted a second one where it's smaller. So the next one, the last submission, what we have currently before the board, what the board looked for to get it approved or whatever for the last meeting, is we have the cubicle content is the 264,025, and we have the square footage of the basement level, the second floor, the first floor. Now, you can see here that on the last plan, this first floor is smaller than the basement. The reason was that the deck was actually over the basement. We used the under the deck for the basement square footage. So that's the reason of the difference in square footage between the basement level and the first floor. Then we have the width and the depth, basically the difference. Now, what we are here, instead of going back and forth, get it approved or disapproved by the board, we want to try to get something from the board. What is the maximum what the board will allow us to approve? We need to remember one thing, that we gave the board a lot of mitigation mitigations, what is different than the other houses around, as explained at the last meetings and when the board visited the site. This house is basically sitting in a slope down, and looking from the road, you can basically only, if there was no trees, you can just see maybe the first floor or even half of the first floor and then the roof. And even though we have a lot of trees, that we plan to keep that trees, and that will basically block the view of the house. So we believe that with that mitigation, we can get something, and that's actually the last column, that we try to minimize our needs. Going to the cubicle content, what we offered, it's hard to figure out exactly doing a floor plan how you will end up with the cubicle content, but we made some calculations roughly. We believe with that last column, if the board will be ready to approve something like this, we will be more than happy with that. Or it might be that the board will tell us, no, we can approve you more than that, or less than that, whatever. So that's the reason we are here. We don't want to play games back and forth. I don't want to waste the board's time. We want to get something that can be approved and get basically the feeling, as discussed with the attorney, John Queenan actually spoke to the attorney, that we want to try to get something from the board until which point they're ready to prove it based on the mitigation what we supplied. And I believe that one thing that I think the look of the house, the board was okay. We will definitely revise it according to the new plan with the same details and colors, but actually the board, I don't think they have any comment on that. If they have, we'll address it. And basically, I'm here to address any concerns. And the last thing, as the attorney mentioned before, I'm asking for an extension for the board to make the decision that I would like that the board should look into that and give us something that we will be able to come back with a new plan, what will be approvable.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Rick.
Well, what the applicant is saying is that they've reduced it. You don't have the visual look, because what he doesn't want to do, which is, I think, understandable, is that he's trying to get a feel for what the board would consider appropriate, because the board discussed the largeness of the home as something of concern to you. And so rather than continually come back with new designs, come back to you with, well, we've reduced it to this much for the square footage as shown, and the cubicle content as shown. Is this something within where the board is comfortable with, or is the board comfortable with something other than this? So that if the board gives some direction to him, he can then come back with the plans of the home to show you and approve it. I believe that's what he's asking. And he realizes that he's not going to be asking you to do that this evening. He's just handed you these numbers right now, so that he's willing, he said, to give you time to go ahead and do that, and therefore extend your time for you to make a decision. So part of it is, I think all that's needed tonight is for you to understand that, ask any questions that you might want to ask. I think then it would be appropriate to put down in a future meeting in which you would probably have many more questions at that time, since you have more time to review it, and then probably the meeting after that, we would be setting for a decision. If that's acceptable to the board, we can then see if that's acceptable to the applicant.
Okay. I'll start with Sandy. Looking at this calculation and the numbers with the reduction.
Yeah. Okay, so the current proposal, the one on the far right, is what we had before us at the last, no.
We don't have it
No,
yet.
you don't have
We don't have it
Right.
yet, okay.
Yes.
So that's the difference between the 6,500 square feet that you just said and the 69 and change that we had before?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
That's,
all right.
You can see it basically, you can see the big number is on the cubicle content, that the plan you have currently is 110%, this is just 50%, it's 55%.
Right, okay. That's the only question I had for now.
okay. Chris? Rich?
Again, I want to stay with the square footage, as we always have, since I've been on the board for 13 years. I don't want to set a precedent with cubicle content, and I'm not sure what it is. But again, I want to stay with the square footage and what the building department submitted to us in terms of, it's not dated, but it's a listing of all the subdivision homes and the size. And if he's looking for feedback, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Not necessarily tonight, but if the board
Yeah.
has some, then yes, I think they're looking for some
And again,
feedback.
I'd be willing to go 10% over the largest, not counting the basement. So that's my personal feeling. That's what we've done in the past. I would go 10% above the largest, not counting the basement, on the square footage.
The largest in the sheet
On-
that you
on-
have?
This is what the building department gave us.
Okay, so what is the largest there that you're,
4963.
49? No. Where do you see-
Yes.
Where do you see 49? That includes the basement.
Look at number 5, includes finished basement. All right, so
I would take, the finished basement is
so you're looking at 3558?
yeah. So you would take out the basement.
And what about 26?
That makes it smaller than what we approved.
Not 26, I'm looking at 13.
The thing you might want to consider is this. I understand that that's what you have done in the past, is look at square footage. What the new wrinkle that came in with this application that you haven't seen in many others, or not on such a scale, is so much unfinished space within a building that doesn't count as square footage. You can imagine if you had, let's say the maximum there is 3,000 square feet. If someone had a building that had 2,900 square feet on the base, and they had an area up above that was equal to that, and only 100 square feet above, it would say it's the same, 3,000 square feet, but it would be double the building. That's why cubicle content, the code suggests that you review that. It doesn't exclude you're looking at square footage. It's whatever makes you appreciate how this building fits into the area, all of the requirements of the ARB review, this similarity and that sort of thing. And the code gives you ways to do that. And one of them is cubicle content. And it's relevant in this particular case because they have so much open space area that's not developed in square footage in the building. And if you had done that before, if you look at the last submission, they're saying it's 110% of the building at 13 Apple Hill. And that means it's basically twice the building size. You wouldn't necessarily see all that from the square footage, although you see quite a bit of it there too. But that is an important feature that you might want to just at least consider. And I think that the code says that you should consider that in your review. And go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Because Rich is looking at this sheet, and the board had asked for this in connection with another application, and your office prepared that, I believe.
The other one I worked with
Gary.
with Gary, yes.
Right. So the numbers that Rich is looking at on that sheet, is that finished square footage, or is that gross square footage?
Well,
It says finished.
it says finished, yeah,
Right.
because they included the basement on one that Gary added in. We normally wouldn't look at it that way. You
Right.
have generally not counted basements when they're unfinished.
And that's what I'm talking about. If there's a chart that talks about X number of finished square footage, but what's being put here is including finished square footage as well as other square footage, it's really comparing apples and oranges, which is why the benefit to the cubicle content is that you're comparing apples and apples.
It's the totality of how it's observed from the street.
Right.
If you look at it from the street, you don't know if it's finished or unfinished. You just see the size of the box, if you will, the house.
Yeah, but-
And that's why they suggest that you look at that.
Yeah, but then I would want to look at the other homes of similar size, the cubicle content, not just one.
Well, that leads to the next question that I have for the applicant. They have listed 13 Apple Hill, which was the one across the street. I think it was selected because, number one, its proximity, and number two, because it is one of the larger homes in the area. I don't know if it's the largest, but I think it's up there. Is that correct, Barry?
Yeah.
It's 4479. I have the application right here if you
Okay,
want to look at
but
it.
its cubicle content is 126,491, and compared to their last application, that's the one where this proposed building in the last submission was 264,025 square feet, or more than double the size of what appears to be the largest building there, or one of the largest buildings there. So it clearly was what you were perceiving it as, significantly larger, what we saw at the field visit. They haven't given you the drawings for what they call the current proposal, but they're saying they have a proposal they would like to submit, if it's to your satisfaction, that will be 50% larger than the largest building there. And I think what they're looking for is feedback from you is, if they present that to you, is a building that's 50% larger than the largest building there, the one across the street, would you consider that in keeping? You talked about 5 or 10% more before. They're not talking about 5 or 10% more. They're talking about 50% more than the largest building. And the question to you is that reasonable? Should they pursue that? Or is there another number that you would have in mind that would be reasonable?
Again, I think it's excessive, the similarity, 50%, and I'd be willing to go 10%.
Just one, if I may ask one question, just a clarification. On the cubicle content, is that the part, let's say if the building, if we have a building where it's more underground and more exposed, is the cubicle content the part of the building where it's exposed from the ground because that's the visible portion, or it's the whole mass, even let's say if I have 2 stories down in the ground, I don't know, it's not like I want to go 2 stories down, but
It's not a perfect thing, and it's not that easy to figure. I think that the things that you've asked the board to consider, for example, the berm in front and the setting, and things that they would consider when they consider cubicle content. If the building was into the hillside and all of, say, 3 full stories were exposed, I think the board would look at that more of that's a larger mass building, and I would, if I was a board member, probably consider the basement level then too, consider all that. If it's just showing the top 2 stories, which is I think what you calculated here, it sounds like an appropriate comparison.
just want to clarify, Barry, I think it's only showing the first floor, the basement is buried in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually it's only showing even 1 floor in the front. That other houses you can see the basement and another floor, and this one you will only see 1 floor in the front plus the
Well,
roof.
you're saying that because of the berm and everything.
Correct. Yep.
That's up to the board to decide that, but from the ground level up, that's what you've taken it from, Barry, right? That's the cubicle content?
Well, no, our cubicle content is the entire volume.
The entire-
We use this cubicle content, not call it volume. So we use in the entire box of the constructed house. So we went right down to the basement.
Okay. And how about for the one across the street? Was it the same?
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing, except that house is lifted out of the ground.
Okay. Well, that's something for the board to consider.
It's going to be an imperfect comparison.
It's not a perfect comparison. I wouldn't say it's imperfect. It's not a perfect comparison, but if they have calculated it the same way, at least they've given you the same cubicle content. They're saying the cubicle content is everything about the shell. Everything inside the shell, from the roof down to the foundation slab,
Correct.
is what they've included in there. And if they've done that for this house and for the other one, this house has a 50% larger. Some of it may be mitigated by how it's set into the property, and that you'd have to consider.
So what it might be that the board will consider that, let's say, even it's 50% larger and that point looking on the whole volume, but the part what is exposed, if it's less than, let's say, 10% or 15% will be okay with the board. I don't know,
It's very hard to do because it depends what side you look at the house from. Same thing in the one across the street.
Right.
It depends where you view it from.
All right, we have to give some direction to the applicant.
Well, but you don't have to do that tonight. The applicant has given you new information tonight, which is not the way that your board acts. It should have been given 2 weeks ago so
Right.
that you could consider these things. So what I'm suggesting, that is, if you had and wanted to give, I didn't want to shut anybody down, if you wanted to give some input, this is an appropriate time to give it, but it certainly isn't one that has allowed you to have considered input with respect to this. So I would suggest that it be put on for the next meeting for further discussion, where you'll have 2 weeks to consider this, and then reset your date for a decision until 2 weeks following that. Is that,
So
I'm sorry.
use the microphone, please.
Decision, I'm sorry. The decision, I don't mean to, what decision?
on the final decision?
how much the percentage.
Okay,
is how much they will-
all right, I just want to make sure, yeah, I mean, we, don't- in
And it
fact,
may be, it may end up to be a little bit longer than that, right? But I don't want to just arbitrarily set it out, because it may mean let's assume we have further discussion at the next meeting, and let's say, hope springs eternal, that there is some broad consensus with respect to the size of the home. Then you would take that, you'd come back for the next meeting or the meeting after with a design. That's what they could then act on. So it may not be 2 meetings from now, maybe 3 meetings from now, but I want to reset, we've already set a date for tonight, so we have to reset another date. So I suggest we reset it, we can always reset it again.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Thank-
With the applicant granting us an extension. He hasn't done that.
Yes, he has.
Yes.
He's given us an
Yes.
extension, and we're just,
I'm granting the,
You
you
do- all right, I
to
just-
make an
and
extension.
it's just deciding now what that extension is.
Okay.
So what I'm proposing, and I'll ask the applicant to specifically consent to this, is that the decision now be adjourned to May 1st,
It's three-
with the possibility that it might actually be May 15th.
No,
Okay.
we're not having a meeting on the 15th.
Okay.
We're having a meeting the next week.
Okay, that would be May 22nd.
Yes.
But right now, we'll reset it at May 1st, and then we'll see how the process goes.
I'm
But they're
okay
also-
with that.
And you're also going to come back on April 17th?
Yes.
Yes, for some direction from you when you've had enough time to digest all of this.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
And
I just-
Gail, you got that consent on the record? Thank you.
I just had one for Rick. Rick, at the last meeting, I had asked about the deed restrictions, whether or not they were filed.
Yes, and there were deed restrictions, I still have a little bit more work to do on that, but the deed restrictions, clearly, there were deed restrictions in the first one. Some of those were required by this board, and there were some others that appear to be just added, all right?
Okay.
When the property was next transferred, those deed restrictions magically disappeared. And then it was transferred to the present owner, and of course, they were not carried forward because there weren't any from the last. The last two were related in interest. One was a corporation in which the member, I think, was Mr. Weiss, and the other was Mr. Weiss. You're not allowed to just erase deed restrictions, all right? There'd be no merit in them if it was that facile that you could just say, well, I don't want to deal with them anymore. So I have to see which ones were ones that this board required as part of its subdivision approval to be deed restrictions. And as part of their resolution of approval, those deed restrictions are going to be required as a condition of approval to be put back into the deed.
Okay, yeah, because I think on the original one, this lot specifically had it.
What is the deed restrictions we are referring to?
There are probably, there are 29 of them,
Wow. Okay.
right? And they magically disappeared
Wow.
from the first, after the first transfer. So I have to, I mean, it's one thing if somebody else put a deed restriction on and those two decide that they want to, you know, the one who granted it says, we're going to now forgive it, you're allowed to do that because it was the one who put the deed restriction on and they can waive it. Subsequent owners can't just waive it on their own. But also, if there was something that was required as part of the condition of approval by this board, as part of its subdivision approval to be conditions, those can't be waived by anybody, and they need to be in the present resolution. I mean, well, it'll be in the present resolution that no plans would ever be signed until there was proof that, in fact, either a new deed was filed with those restrictions or a covenant of restrictions was filed, which amounts to the same thing.
I think usually, I've seen this before on other properties, but usually if there is no release, then the deed restrictions are still in effect, even if it's not carried over to the deed, to the next deed.
Well, legally, they are in
Yeah.
effect, yes. But the problem is that a subsequent bona fide purchaser thinks that there's no deed restrictions,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Now, with a good title report and good attorney,
Usually it comes out.
they advise them that you have these other things, but it's not wise to go ahead and rely upon that. We would
Right.
like to see that, in fact, it's right there in that deed, or at least another separate instrument, a covenant of restrictions that applies. Because otherwise, there are some people who'd read the deeds and say, well, yeah, there was deed restrictions back here, but they're no longer here, so I'm no longer bound by them. That's not legally correct, But I think that's somewhat reasonable for somebody who's not schooled in the law to think that that's what the result was. So we'll go ahead and determine which ones were those that were required by you, because even if somebody else had required deed restrictions, not you, and they're not allowed to take them away, you also can't be bound by somebody else's deed restrictions. Those are private matters. So even if it said you can only have a 3,000 square foot home in a deed restriction, you can't enforce that, right? But if in fact your resolution said 3,000 square feet, that's going to be binding. All right, so I still have some work to do on that, Sandy.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thanks
Have a
for
good
the
night.
board for giving me the opportunity again.
All right, so Dennis, we have 1 and 2 so far for the 17th. Next item on, excuse me, agenda is the public hearing for Aldi for an amended site plan, special permit, and ARB for placement of a grocery store with an existing commercial center. Said property is located within the Woodbury Center Shopping Plaza and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 2, Lot 1.12. Is it warm in here, or is it just me? Notice was hereby given that the Village of Woodbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing at 7:30 PM on Wednesday, April 3rd, 2019 at Woodbury Village Hall, 455 Route 32, Highland Mills, New York, in the matter of the application of Aldi, Inc. for an amended site plan, special permit, and ARB for placement of a grocery store within an existing commercial center. Said property is located within the Woodbury Center Shopping Plaza and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 2, Lot 1.12. And that notice was published in the paper on Friday, the 29th. And I just had a question. We did receive from the Orange County Department of Planning on March 27th. And just a reminder to the applicant, when the final plans are in for signature,
Yes, yep.
in the bottom right-hand corner, or
For the-
near, so I don't have to go
the board,
flipping. Okay, please remember that. I had a note here to question about Gary, about the determination of sign colors, but I guess it's on the I should sort of ZBA agenda for next week. They're on the agenda for next week regarding the colors.
Oh, okay.
So I guess you had to go,
Yes.
Gary said you had to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, we didn't get a definitive answer from him, but I think no answer, we decided to go ahead and apply for both the colors and also the signage on the front and the side, the two signs,
Okay,
just to make sure that all the bases were covered.
all right. So if you want to give a brief overview, so there's some members of the audience that might want to speak on this application.
Okay, thank you very much, members of the board. Again, my name is Tim Shegg with APD Engineering and Architecture. I'm joined tonight with Jonathan Ekman from Aldi. We're back before you tonight to seek approval of the proposed Aldi project and to respond to any questions that may come up. As a quick recap, Aldi is proposing to remodel and retrofit a portion of the existing cold store. The approximate floor area will be 25,215 square feet. The proposed retrofit will fit entirely within the existing store that's out there today. They will be utilizing one of the 4 loading docks that Kohl's presently has allocated to them. For the exterior site improvements, we're going to be adding additional sidewalk along the front of where Aldi's going to be, along the side for cart storage and for access into the store. We'll also be paving out portions of the parking lot shown in shaded area gray there in order to flatten out the pavement for both ADA access and for ease of the carts to come and go. At the back of the store here, there'll be a new trash area. We've allocated out 2 spaces for ease access for the trucks coming in and out. We're also adding a new emergency or second egress point on the side of the store along that side. In total, with the new ADA spots out front, the trash enclosure, and the sidewalk, we're losing total of 13 parking spaces that we talked about before. We have submitted to the board both parking analysis and traffic analysis. Both of those kind of showed that there really wasn't a significant impact as a result of proposed improvements. We did resubmit a short EAF with some of the comments addressed that were brought up. I'm not sure if you have it or not. And then we talked about the zoning board of appeals. We did apply for the ZBA for the signage for the 5 colors and also the signage on the front and the side. I think that kind of covers it in real brief. You good? Okay. I don't know if you have any questions.
Board members, anyone have a question? Consultants? All right, with that being said, I'm going to ask gentlemen to have a seat, see if anyone from the audience would like to speak, since this is a public hearing. And did you bring any of this color samples? Okay, just, if you just want, just go up there real quick and just so you can show the camera too, and you can put them. You keep, basically keeping the same colors as what's currently there, and,
Is what we're showing here.
yeah. Board members, you're okay with the colors that are being, that we saw them? Just in case anyone from the audience wanted to see them, you can put them on the chair or something.
Okay.
Anyone in the second row that would like to come up and speak on this application? Anyone in the third row on this application for Aldi? Anyone want to come up and speak? Fourth row? Come on up, state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Charlie Bazidlo. I'm outside counsel for the Hampton Inn, Millwood Place LLC, the owners and operators of the Hampton Inn. A couple of points I'd like to raise with the board, your consideration of this project. I hear the chairman that the public notice was published in the paper on Friday. We also did receive a mailing of it. We didn't get that mailing until Friday. That was passed on to me on Monday. And I only bring that up because with that short notice, we really haven't had a chance to take a look at the entire file that the board has in front of it. I was able to quickly look at what was available online. Some of the material was there, not all of it was there. So the comments we're going to give tonight are just based upon what I know of the project at this point. Couple issues we'd like to raise. The traffic analysis. There was the parking analysis was available online. It's 14, 15 pages long. Took a quick look at that. And one of the initial comments I have about that is that I don't know how critical it is to the study itself, but it does seem to take into consideration the parking for the hotel itself. And as I'm sure the board members are aware, the hotel is separate from this project. It actually exists on a separate tax lot. That project is though its access comes through the shopping center, it exists as a separate tax lot, and the parking of it is really only there to serve the hotel and not the rest of the shopping center. The traffic, I did not see the actual traffic analysis available online. I looked at the video of the board's last meeting. Mr. Koenig was here. I think their traffic consultant was here. Listened to some of his comments about the potential impact of the project. And from what I could tell from his comments, it seems they've looked at the potential traffic generated by the supermarket itself, the grocery store, I should say, and its impact on the center's intersection with Route 1732. Again, I don't know, the details of that. We have not been able to have our own consultant take a look at that, so I can't really opine about that. But it doesn't seem that the traffic study included any analysis about the internal intersections in the shopping center. Critical to us, our only access to our hotel facility is down that main road or main driveway that comes down. The main intersection, which I think people would access the shopping center, intersects with that driveway. And I think that needs to be looked at almost as if it was a public street, even though it is a private road, about what is the impacts now of all of a sudden, a rather large usage or traffic generator being located at this corner of the shopping center. And again, that leads to the whole kind of general comment that a grocery store is really a lot different than any of the retail that's been in the shopping center. And though grocery stores may be an allowed use here, I would ask the board to consider that this is really an application for a new type of use within that shopping center. And its impact on the critical intersections, particularly the ones that impact us to be able to reach the hotel facility in the back, I think need to be looked at in a little more detail. The Again, getting to the different nature of a grocery store at this site, I didn't see any mention of a noise study or a noise analysis being looked at. I think the applicant has indicated in some of the material I saw online that there will be nighttime deliveries to the store. Pretty typical for a grocery operation, but I think that's different than what we have at that retail facility right now. And we're concerned about in the back of the building that there's going to be more truck deliveries, deliveries at perhaps more sensitive hours, and how all those truck movements and/or the parking of trucks waiting to make deliveries to the grocery store could possibly impact the hotel operation, which is adjacent to this. I also noted on the plans that I'm not sure if, I think it's just a dumpster or if it's a compactor that's going to be located in the back. And again, the noise that could be generated from that, particularly in off hours. I don't really know when the grocery store would be dealing with their trash, but I have a sense that maybe not during normal business hours and could occur also at nighttime. I heard the applicant talk tonight about the sign colors. That does seem to be an issue that needs to be looked at by the ZBA. And I guess, it would seem to me that if there is an application from the ZBA, this board's not really authorized at this point to make a decision on the application. So, basically what I'm asking tonight is for the board to allow us more time to look at the complete application. I'll be making a FOIL application to the building department to take a look at the whole application. We'd like to have our own consultants take a look at that information and perhaps provide further comment back to the board, so. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else along the back of a room, sitting or standing or otherwise? Do we want to close the public hearing, or do you want to hear from John about the traffic? What do you want to, we probably should close the public hearing. Rick, guide me on this one? Because he can have some answers for the traffic, or,
I would say it makes sense for John to do that. I wouldn't necessarily close the public hearing at this moment. The public may want to hear what he has to
Okay.
say, and then somebody else will come up and say something.
okay. John, you have a microphone? Underneath the tape in the corner, all the way in the, there you go.
I made a few notes during that, the last speaker. I'll first talk about the parking. The parking, as the plan is currently proposed, actually considers both the hotel and the retail parking as one on one site plan, and that has a total approval of 1,421 spaces. That's why when we requested the parking study be conducted, we were very specific that we wanted to know the parking that's available within 200, 250 feet of the store, because we recognize the fact that the distances between where what would be, quote, the hotel parking was and where the retail parking is. They indicated, based upon that survey, that there would be sufficient parking. We checked the numbers, we've visited the site many times, and we concur. So I don't think parking is going to be an issue. In fact, it's the same type of use, same square footage, and the required by the code is the same on the both cases. The applicant has asked for a waiver of 31 spaces, and based upon what's out there, we recommended that waiver from 1421 that are required based upon the square footages that are there today. It's the same square footage, it's slightly different use compared to what's provided as 1390. So I think the parking is done. So we looked at the 250 feet away as well as the overall site. With respect to the traffic, part of the problem looking at other intersections other than the one at the state highway is that the project is underdeveloped. There's a number of vacant stores. It's impossible to estimate the volume of traffic passing through the internal intersections because an observation today, there was almost no traffic in that center during, let's say, the 4 o'clock hour. So I don't know what it would show. I don't know what intersection you would look at. I've never experienced a problem on the internal myself, and I've visited that location a number of times, but it is a question that has not been answered. We feel that by taking the impact out to the roadway, 32, and evaluating it through 2030, which is when the improvements are already made and it's the far-out design year for the state, it was a reasonable attempt by the applicant to come up with the, quote, to establish the impact of this particular center, and it showed to be minimal differences, recognizing the fact that there's a retail use going to another type of retail use, that being a food store. With respect to the noise and the delivery, I leave that to someone else. We did make a comment. The fact is that we were told that their deliveries are scheduled, such that based upon that, and the fact is that we recognize the fact that there's only one dock, and we recommended that it become part of the approval resolution, that deliveries will be scheduled such that only one dock is needed, and trucks would not be waiting to get into that dock. And the hours can be also made part of the resolution for deliveries because of noise issues. And the other one we recommended is no carts in the corral. And the layout of this particular parking area, it does little to change the overall drive aisles of the center. The changes are within the parking area itself, the retail parking area. So that's the summary, and the only thing that wasn't done as part of the application is the internal analysis. We didn't see a need to do it because of the type of the proposed use. And then the last one, the dumpster location, I leave that to someone else to figure out.
Thank you. Dennis, you want to take the dumpster and the noise? Or the noise, whichever one you want to take first.
Well, there was no independent noise analysis performed. They are proposing to maintain the same parking count here. There's no noise generator particularly associated with this structure. There may be some air conditioning units and that sort of thing, the standard in the business, but there's the same amount of parking. As a matter of fact, through the analysis, they've shown they can reduce the parking spaces by 13. So there's no increase in that level. As far as the parking, the dumpster locations, I'll take a look at that, Maria.
Can I just ask the applicant to just step up to the microphone for a second?
Yes.
Currently, the dumpster for Kohl's, is it in the same place? Is this the same is this the same area?
It is not, and I
Okay.
will turn the site plan around to be able to explain this a little bit. I did ask Kohl's if we could use their dumpster area, which is actually located, this is where the dock is.
Take the microphone
Yep.
with you.
All right, so our dock is right here, and this hallway is what gives us access into the back room of our store. There's 3 other docks here. There's also another dock on the other side of the Kohl's that they primarily use. There, on this appendage of the building, is the Kohl's dumpsters. We are not able to have access into the Kohl's space. Our access is only from our one dock and down this short hallway into our back room. So in order to, we have to be functioning within ourselves. I needed to provide a dumpster location for operations. I tried to place it on the back of the building here, but it impacted the trucks because the truck dock is so tight to the building. So I had to put it on the side. I kept it as far back on the side as possible and put it next to the staircase here, and we will have the screened enclosure. But given the site and where it's located, there's not much that I can do with it there. And can I speak to truck deliveries and timing and the type of trucks that we use?
Yes.
So just to be clear, there is one delivery per night. All other deliveries would happen during the day, that being Coca-Cola and milk. So only one delivery at night. Our trucks are idle free in the sense that once they park, there is no noise. They turn off. So minimal amount of noise happening during that period of delivery, with one truck coming in, backing up to this portion here. The driver would walk around and access the back room on the side stairway here, not have access to the sales floor, walk in, take 26 pallets out of the truck within the period of about 45 minutes, park them in the back room, and then go back, get in the truck, and drive away.
What time of night generally is it scheduled?
It
The time period?
can range because all of our trucks go out overnight, just depends on the routing. But I would say typically between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m.
Oh, so it's the whole night?
Yep.
So, the hours of operation, when if the truck comes in at 1 o'clock in the morning, the truck driver is the only person in the building?
Correct.
There's no other employees?
Correct. They have their own security code. There's an alarm panel on the back room door, and they will disarm just the back room, make their deliveries, rearm the back room, and exit the facility. And to timing of the dumpster and trash use, that would only be during open operating hours. That would only be an Aldi employee taking out a couple, a bag or two of trash to the dumpster a day.
Okay, and Sandy said that's only one truck at night?
Yep. In the event that, maybe holidays, maybe there's, a special run for turkeys or something happening, but 98% of the time throughout the course of the year, it would be one truck delivery. Unless the store increased in sales to a significant amount that would require a second delivery. I don't know the timing of that. Sometimes those would happen during the day, if that was the case.
Dennis, do you know approximately, and this, you may not be able to answer this, the back end of Cole, that store, or that building, and the hotel or motel? The distance approximate? And it is wooded, right? It's wooded there.
There is a section, there is some woods, and then there's the parking lot with 1, 2, 3. There's a single and I think a double before the building.
On that side of the building?
On the
Yeah.
building, and then
That's what I thought.
yeah. You wouldn't happen to know when Kohl's gets their garbage picked up?
I do not.
You don't, okay,
No.
I was just curious, but I
No.
didn't think you would know, okay.
Nope.
On your delivery trucks?
Yep.
On your delivery trucks, what equipment do they use to move the goods from the back of the truck into? Is it a dolly or is it?
It is an electric pallet jack that is stored in the back of the store. So he'll come in, go ahead and take that. It'll probably be stored in this small corner here, and he would just simply wheel those out and down. You will not hear any noise on the exterior of the trailer from any of those goods being wheeled out.
Any other?
Yep.
You said the truck he turns
Yep.
off, there's no idling, that's what he said.
Yep.
Chris, anything? No. Chris, not Chris. Rich, I just renamed you. Any questions? I'm good. Okay. You gonna look into the dumpster, Dennis, you said?
Well, from the description they provided with a few bags being taken out on the side there, I see this no different than any other operations there. I haven't heard anything that would make a difference on that. But as far as that distance, the distance from the rear corner, let's say where the dumpster is, to the side wall of the hotel, well, I don't want to do it in miles.
Building, you're talking about building to building. You're looking at least a
Is about
500.
580 feet.
Okay, that's twice my driveway, yeah. All right,
Disturbance. It seems like it's an appropriate distance. I don't see how you're gonna hear, you might hear a truck pull in if a window was open, but I just,
Okay. With all that being said, board members, do you want to close the public hearing? All right.
Maria, could I just ask
Oops.
one question of Mr. Bizidlo? You had mentioned about the timing of both the delivered notice to Hampton as well as the publication of the public hearing. You're not indicating that either one of those was untimely under the code, correct?
No, when I looked at the code, I believe the publication only has to be 5 days ahead of time.
Right, and there's no notice to the neighbors that's required, that's done as a courtesy. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay,
My point being that, even with that, not enough time to look at the entire.
understood.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right, Rich, are you making a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. With all that being said and what we heard, does the board need any additional information before I read the resolution and with the request of the one member from the audience?
Just a quick question. Since they're going before the ZBA for the signage, if they were for some reason denied, they can either change their sign or then what? Since it's a brand.
You can't approve the sign as it is on here, so there should be a condition in the resolution saying that you're not approving any sign by virtue of this. So I think that they have the right to just go to Gary for the sign after that. If not, if they have to come back to you, they'll have to come back to you. But you're not allowed to go ahead and approve anything that's not code compliant, and that sign right now is not code compliant.
Do you want me to read the resolution, the draft resolution?
I'm okay with it.
Chris? Rich? All right. We have a draft amended resolution of approval for site plan, special permit, and architectural review board for Woodbury Center, Harriman LLC, in parens, Aldi, Inc. Just on page 3, public hearing on this application was convened on April 3rd, 2019, when it was closed. Just wanted to make note of that. Then on page 4, findings, first paragraph, in making this determination of approval, the planning board has determined that the combination of uses on this lot will generate parking needs which are less than the total amount of parking spaces that the zoning code requires. Therefore, the board has determined to reduce the number of required spaces by 2.2%, a reduction of 13 stalls as permitted under Village Code subsection 310-40 in parens C. I just want to make sure all the board members are in agreement with that. You take that as a yes? Yeah, but I'm just reading it because that's that's findings that we've additional into the resolution. On page 5, resolution of approval, specific conditions, number 1, all conditions of prior approvals in connection with this property shall continue to be in full force and effect, and this resolution does not supersede or otherwise modify such prior approvals and conditions except as specifically set forth in this resolution. Did the applicant get a copy of the resolution? Okay. If you want, you can stand there if you have any comment as I go through. Number 2, no building permit shall be issued authorizing the construction or renovation of structures inconsistent with the architectural renderings submitted to and approved by the Architectural Review Board as part of this approval. Nor shall any certificate of occupancy be issued for any structures constructed except in conformance with such renderings. Any deviation from such renderings shall require further planning board review. 3, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall revise the plans to provide the sizes and species of the trees and shrubs being planted. I'm going to take a step back here. Board members, are we, I forgot to, Stu had asked about that earlier. are we okay with the landscaping that's been given to us? Hold on, I forgot what Stu said. Just bear with me for a second.
Stu, I think, indicated there had to be revisions to the plan to comply with their previous comments.
Yeah, he said, requires that the applicant submit revised landscaping plan number 6 for our sign off before you sign the map. That was something that he wanted in the resolution. I'm not sure if it's...
You have it in the resolution.
Okay.
By requiring compliance with the memorandum of the
Okay, I forgot to talk about that.
same thing for our comments.
Okay. Prior to the signing of the, number 4, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall revise the landscaping plans in accordance with the February 1st, 2019 memorandum of the planning board planner to the satisfaction of the planner. There we go, I should have read it, and that would have been fine. Number 5, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall verify that the access to the dumpster at the rear corner of the building is adequate to the satisfaction of the village engineer. 6, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant resubmit its March 6, 2019 report with the correct traffic count summary tables to the satisfaction of the village traffic engineer. 7, site lighting shall be designed with non-glare fixtures which provide internal shielding to eliminate off-site glare and to limit the foot candle level at the site perimeter to 0.1 foot candles. Light fixtures shall not exceed 35 feet to the top of the fixture. Signs shall only be illuminated during operating hours. General lighting shall be reduced to security levels after operating hours. 8, the planning board has reviewed the building elevations, including materials, colors, glazing, roof lines, signs, and other features impacting appearance for potential excessive uniformity, dissimilarity, inappropriateness, or poor quality of design in the exterior appearance that might adversely affect the desirability of the immediate area for residential and business purposes under the ARB guidelines, in parens, Chapter 7, Appendix A 314, end parens. This resolution of approval does not authorize any sign to be erected. The applicant shall submit a sign application to the building department to confirm the sign details, including area, mounting, quantity, and other features to satisfy the village code, the standard building department practice and sign requirements for this center. 9, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall revise plans to demonstrate that the impervious surface coverage restriction is met after the modifications to landscaped areas is complete. 10, prior to signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall revise the plans to demonstrate that the covered cart storage areas conform to the applicable setbacks. Number 11, Rick?
Yes, I conferred with our traffic consultant, and I believe, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, that the following would be an apt condition with respect to restrictions on delivery of trucks. It would read 11, truck deliveries must be scheduled such that only one truck delivery is made at any time, as there is only one truck delivery dock available. There shall be no stacking of delivery trucks waiting for access to the dock. Do you want me to read that again?
Board members, do we need that reread?
That's okay.
We're
We'll
good.
get it revised.
You're okay with that? I'm talking at the applicant, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. They nodded to me.
Yes.
Thank you. 12, prior to the signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall either provide a will-serve letter from the Village of Harriman in parens Water and the Orange County Sewer Department in parens Sewer, or confirmation that such approval is not required. 13, all stormwater must flow unrestricted to drains and no ponding or areas of potential ice development shall be created. 14, prior to signing of the plans by the chairwoman, the applicant shall comply with the memorandum of the village engineer dated March 14, 2019, to the satisfaction of the village engineer. 15, all new windows and doors shall be constructive of non-reflective material. 16, this amended special permit shall be...
But if we could just wait a second, I'm going to insert another traffic condition in here that was suggested.
Is that going to be number 16 then?
That'll be number 16. We'll renumber present 16 to 17.
Gotcha.
And this is something that the applicant had discussed and said that that was his plan, and that is that no shopping cart corral shall be allowed in any parking lot or area.
And that is fine.
Board members, you're okay with that? Number 16? Number 17, this amended special permit shall be subject to annual renewal by the planning board. The Village of Woodbury Building Department shall inspect the premises during the year after approval of the special permit. On or about each anniversary date of the special permit, the building inspector shall submit a report to the planning board if he identifies any violations or complaints arising from construction of this project, including whether the grocery carts are being handled in an orderly fashion and/or posing a hazard. If the building inspector submits such a report, the applicant shall appear before the planning board at a scheduled public hearing to address any such violations and/or complaints prior to renewal of this special permit. The village building department shall thereafter continue to inspect the premises on an annual basis prior to the expiration of each renewed term of this special permit to confirm compliance. If no violations or complaints are noted by the building inspector in any year, then the applicant's appearance and a need for a public hearing is waived for subsequent years in which no violations or slash complaint report is filed by the building inspector, and the special permit renewal is automatic. However, if there is any significant complaint or irregularity that comes to the attention of the building department or planning board in between the annual special permit renewal dates, which is not be remedied within a reasonable period of time, after the noncompliance or complaint is brought to the attention of the applicant, then the matter shall be brought on by the building inspector for a public hearing before the planning board, at which time said board shall rule upon the need to deny or modify the special permit. Anything else? Board members? Your pleasure.
I'll make a motion, we accept the resolution as read with the changes.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I have a lot of signing to do. No, seriously, if you can, remember to put that little box in the bottom right-hand corner, then I don't have to go across the maps and sign every page.
Yeah, I'll definitely coordinate with the building department and get that on there.
Perfect, thank you. Gentlemen, have a good night.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Silverstein/Corporate Drive, public hearing for site plan approval, special permit and ARB for an office building and parking lot to include landscaping. Said property is located at 14 Corporate Drive in Center Valley and is known under Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 226, Block 1, Lot 88. Just give me a moment to get the file. Oh, John, yes, good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Unless you can stay if you want. For the record, same message to, let's see, what am I doing here? Jason, same message, bottom right-hand corner of any plans with the chairperson's signature and the date and, the stamp.
2 by 3 is good? 2
Excuse
inches
me?
by 3 inches?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's about right. On 3/19, we received the applicant submitted plans, and on April 2nd, we received a short EAF. The only thing I noticed, you didn't do a rear elevation for us, or is there one and these are just revised? Because it says side elevation front. I didn't get a rear elevation.
The front and the rear are the same, basically. The two sides are the same, and the front and the rear are the same.
Okay, so Dennis, applicant is saying that the front and the rear are the same and the sides are the same, so does it need to be reflected on the,
If the board understands that, they can submit a plan that says, north and south and east and west elevations. But if they're making that representation, that's what you're going to see. It's going to be in the mirror image.
okay.
Is that correct, Jason?
Yes.
So there's going to be access in the front and the rear? I thought that was only going to have,
That's the way it was represented previously, and that's where we continue.
am I missing something? Okay. The only reason I'm asking is because the proposed map on 1 of 3 it shows 4 sidewalks going into each side of the building.
I don't see it.
And I'm just asking because your side elevations don't show don't show doors.
Okay, we can eliminate those, this portion of the pad here that's connecting to the building.
Okay. Board members, you understand what I was, okay. All right, so there's no doors on the side, only from the facing corporate and in the back of the building. Okay, that was my, and the other thing is landscaping also from Stu. Did you see Stu's note with the landscaping?
Yes,
Okay, we'll get to that.
there was a similar note to the other.
Right,
They had comments, they need to be satisfied on the final site plan.
okay. All right, since this is a public hearing, Jason-
Maria,
Yes,
can I
sir.
just weigh in? We were not able to find an ARB application with the materials listed and
You know,
everything.
you're right. Jason, did you submit an ARB application with this materials?
No, we have not.
Did you bring materials with you?
Yes, we did.
So where do we go with this now?
But the way your board has normally done that is that your board wants to have that information available to the public ahead of the public hearing so they could review the materials. The materials themselves, the samples weren't in the building department, so nobody could see them. So I think since your practice is to make sure that that information is available, you can continue the public hearing until the next meeting. And in the meantime, Jason can go ahead and submit the ARB application. You're familiar with that application, right, Jason? Okay.
Yes.
Where it will indicate all the specifics, style and color, et cetera. But you can continue with the public hearing tonight so the public can see that, but I think you ought not to close it until they actually have that form submitted.
Just to make mention, all of the materials were listed on the plans that were submitted.
But we don't have that.
This is the practice of the board, you know, and I'm not sure that people would look on those for that because historically, everything has been done on that form, so people look for that form.
And that form usually gets attached to our resolution.
The colors are provided.
The colors, where,
Those are provided on the architectural plans.
Are they?
I think they're listed right here.
Yeah, I'm looking for colors though, to make sure.
it does say it, but we have our
Okay.
form that needs to be filled out and completed. All right. Because it's not in the resolution, right? All right, just give us a brief overview while they figure that one out.
Sure, so this is application for 14 Corporate Drive. It's a 6,000 square foot
The
building.
microphone, please.
On a 3,000 square foot footprint. It has 31 parking spaces. It's entirely the same as prior applications that were approved for this lot. The lot is 0.9 acres, so it's slightly under the required lot area, and it also includes parking in the front yard, which are variances that were granted previously and have continued with the property. Other than that, there hasn't been any change in the application. The building elevations and such are the same as previously approved. And we're just asking, and actually, I don't know if it's true, but because the ARB was already approved for this building, we're only asking for site plan reapproval. We're not asking for a ARB reapproval, and those things haven't changed since prior ARB approvals.
That's not my understanding is that this is also for ARB approval.
Okay. The rest of the site plan is generally compliant. There's a lighting plan that was provided and a landscape plan that was provided. You mentioned some comments from Stu's office. I had contacted Jonathan, and he said he had not reviewed or was not asked to review the current submission, so I haven't received any comments from him in regards to that.
Stu's note just referred to the last submission that they had. If you've revised the plans, then you're that much further ahead. If you haven't revised the plans yet to satisfy his comments, he was just noting that there were some out there that they haven't reviewed for compliance.
That was the memo of the plan that was dated February 15th, 2019.
Okay, we've submitted in response to that. I'll make sure that his office has
Do you have
those.
a copy of the draft resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
But it shows that it's the
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was just looking at the resolution from 2013, Rick. And you're using the same exact elevations, right? It's a little different.
I think just the window work.
The window work is different.
The only thing which is different in this elevation is that we made the arched top window above the entry.
Yep.
So it was small fixed windows, and we made it similar to the other windows to the building, and we added the arch top.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything else, Jesse, before we go to the public?
No?
All right. If, gentlemen, if you can have a seat, please. Anyone in the second row that would like to speak on this application? Anyone in the third row, please come to the podium and state your name for the record. You can take the microphone out and hold it so it's a little easier for you.
I happen to be the resident next to this building, and the last time I had stood here, of
Just,
course, there was a lot
just
more...
your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Todd Binder. The last time that these people had come to put a plan in place, it was drastically different. I know the site's been approved for the building. Again, my concerns are how it's going to impact, of course, myself, and how the changes, although may be minor, how they may impact from a weather condition or the overall layout. So I'd like to try to get a better understanding overall of what they're proposing in terms of their special requests to see where things might be going, whether it's relocation of the dumpster or how the parking lot's going to be laid out in regards to the traffic going in and out. So I would like to, if I may, get copies of being able to see what's being asked to be changed here or from the board, so I can
Rick,
evaluate it at least.
All of the plans, as well as a lot of other things, consultant memorandums, et cetera, are all in the building department, and you have the right to go in and ask for just to view it or ask to have copies made. Copies will be at your expense, but you have the right to go in and look at all the documents that you want.
Okay, just out of curiosity, the special requests that are being made now, is this the first time this is being presented to the board?
What it is the
I don't know what special request you're talking about.
Well, I got the impression from, at least on either that or a misunderstanding, that there was looking to be a grant, a special request for a grant.
What may be helpful to you is to know that they went for a change, and they went to the ZBA for a change that was denied. And so they've come back with the exact same plan that was previously approved. There is no change in the footprint, the location of the dumpster, the grading, everything that was approved last time is what they're proposing now.
When was that?
2013 is the resolution that I have. So
And the only change that I've heard now, the only one I've heard right now, is the windows. The windows are going to be different. That makes the building a slight different because they're small panes instead of the larger ones. But other than that, they've proposed to the board, and I'd like the applicant to correct me if I'm wrong, that there are no changes from the previously approved plan.
Okay, all right, that's what I was
Is
kind
that
of curious
correct,
about.
Jason?
Thank you, Dennis.
As I mentioned previously, the site plan is literally a scan of the previously approved site plan.
Okay.
That's why those pieces of sidewalk remain, those were on the Zimmerman plan.
Okay. So
Thank you.